When was the last time your players were actually afraid of a goblin? I mean, really afraid. Not annoyed, not amused, not rolling their eyes while they swatted through a CR 1/4 speed bump, but genuinely thrown off, paranoid, sweating, second guessing every quarter and shadow. Yeah, that's what I thought, because somewhere along the way, goblins got this reputation as harmless little XP dispensers, cannon fodder, comic relief. But let me tell you something, and you might want to write this down. Goblins are not dumb. Goblins are not weak. And if you're using them right, goblins are not fair. Just think for a second. Your party's creeping through a ruined fortress, nice and slow, torches out, spells prepared. And then they hear it. A giggle. Not a laugh, a giggle. High pitched, nasally, and way too close. And before they can even react, twang! An arrow zips from the shadows. Not from ahead, mind you, from above. There's a hole in the ceiling, a tunnel. Now there's another giggle, off to the side. Clank! A bucket drops. Whoosh! The floor is slick. Someone's already fallen. The rogue tries to chase. The goblin's gone. The paladin charges forward. Another goblin pops out, stabs his leg, and disappears down into a crawl space. Your party's not in a fight. They're in a trap. A loud, messy, perfectly chaotic trap built by creatures who have turned mischief into a martial art. And that right there, that's a goblin encounter done right. So if your players are saying, they're just goblins, then my friend, we've got work to do. Because these little green fey bastards aren't here to win. They're here to ruin your party's day. And they're very good at it. Let's talk about why goblins might be the most dangerous low CR monsters in the entire game, if you stop treating them like a punchline. But hold up, let's go ahead and rewind a bit, because if we're going to play goblins the right way, we've got to understand what they are, and more importantly, what they aren't. See, old school goblins, they were just evil little cave rats, tribal cannon fodder, grunts for bigger, meaner villains. They lived in holes, they hated the sun, and they got mowed down in droves by level 2 adventurers who barely broke a sweat. But in the 2024 Monster Manual, goblins have evolved. They're not just low-level thugs anymore, they're Fey. That's right, these little bastards come from the Feywild. You know, the land of mischief, madness, illusions, and things that smile when they ruin your life. So what does that mean for goblins? It means they're not just annoying, they're chaotically intelligent. They don't build cities, they build death traps. They don't follow orders, they follow whoever's the loudest, weirdest, or most dangerously inspiring at any given moment. And they don't worship in temples, they throw festivals that double as ambushes. Their society, if you can even call it that, it's built around 3 things: noise, fire, and whoever made the coolest mess last week. Give them half a reason and they'll switch sides. Follow a talking mushroom, or crown a goblin king just because he found a shiny rock that told him secrets. And I love that, because goblins don't need a noble cause or an ancient prophecy to act. They just need a target, some rope, and one guy willing to scream, "For the fire god," as he lights a barrel of oil and jumps off a roof. That's goblin culture in a nutshell. If it's dumb and effective, it's tradition. If it explodes, it's sacred. And if it gets a laugh while making someone else's day worse, that goblin just became the new warlord. So when you're building your goblin encounters, don't think orc light. Goblins are fey agents of petty chaos. Think cartoon anarchy with blades. Think a swarm of chaotic, neutral raccoons who just learned how to set traps and cast spells. They don't want to conquer your kingdom. They just want to set your bedroll on fire, steal your spellbook, and slap your paladin in the face with a fish before vanishing into a tunnel you didn't even know existed. That's the kind of energy that we're working with here. And if you lean into that, you're not just running goblins, you're putting your players into a nightmare comedy war zone that they'll never forget. Okay, now that we've discussed what goblins are, it's time to meet the whole crew. because this isn't just one monster. This is a whole team. Each goblin in the monster manual has a different job, a different vibe, and if you use them together, they're basically a symphony of chaos. Let's go ahead and break it down. First up, we have the goblin minion. This little dude is the lowest of the low. We're talking a CR 1/8. He has 7 hit points, he's armed with 3 daggers, and a really bad plan. But don't laugh. Don't underestimate them, because minions are the bait. They're not supposed to kill your players, they're supposed to get chased. They're fast, they're stealthy, they have a stealth +6 by the way, and they've got nimble escape, which means they can disengage or hide every single turn. You throw these guys into the middle of your dungeon as noisemakers, distractors, button pressers. They pop out of a barrel, yell, throw a knife, and then vanish down a hole. You don't kill the fighter, you just make him chase you into a pit trap. That's their job. Next up is the Goblin Warrior. This is your bread and butter. A CR 1/4, he has 10 hit points, an AC of 15, a short bow, a scimitar, and they hit harder when they've got advantage. You know what that means. It means these little bastards were born for ambushes. They hide, they wait, and the second one of your players walks into the wrong hallway, short bow shots from every angle, all with advantage, all doing bonus damage. They're not tough, they're not brave, but they don't need to be, because every time they fire, they duck back into the dark. They're like goblin snipers, constantly moving, popping out of weird places, and vanishing before you can retaliate. And because they've also got nimble escape, they're the kings of hit and run. Think of them like little skirmishers, or really mean raccoons with short bows. Then there's the Goblin Boss, who's a CR1, has 21 HP, a chain shirt, and a big attitude. But here's the thing, you're not running this guy like a bruiser, you're running him like a coward with power. He's got an ability called Redirect Attack, so if someone tries to hit him, he can shove one of his underlings into the blow instead. And that's hilarious and evil and so goblin. You want your Goblin Boss yelling orders from behind a pile of minions, ducking behind barrels, hiding in smoke, and occasionally pointing at a warrior and saying, No, you get stabbed, not me. He's the one pushing others into danger, taking credit when things go right, and blaming someone else when they don't. He's not brave, he's not strong, he's just bossy, slippery, and surrounded by expendable meat. Which brings us to the MVP, the Goblin Hexer. This one is brand new in the 2024 Monster Manual, and they have a challenge rating of 3, 45 hit points, a staff that deals psychic damage, and a spell list that's just pure goblin energy. We're talking Grease, Fairy Fire, Blindness, Deafness, Minor Illusion, and a nasty little reaction called Jinx. And Jinx forces a wisdom save, and if the target fails, their attack misses, even if it's already a hit. That's just mean, and I love it. You run your Hexer like an unhinged stage magician. Big gestures, big personality, yelling spell names dramatically while hiding behind a curtain. Let them drop Grease on the Paladin, Fairy Fire on the Rogue, Blindness on the Ranger. And when the Barbarian finally gets through the line and lands a hit, Jinx, nope, try again. It's all designed to frustrate, to disrupt, to make your party feel like they're fighting the monster version of a prank show host. So to recap, we've got minions who distract, warriors who swarm and strike, bosses who push others into danger, and hexers who mess with your brain and laugh about it. Together, they're not just a random encounter, they're a unit, they're a warband, and they're going to make your players absolutely lose their minds. Alright, now that we know what each goblin does on paper, let's talk about how to actually use them. Because goblins don't win by standing toe-to-toe with the party and swinging swords. That's orc behavior. And goblins are better than that. Goblins win by playing smarter, faster, dirtier, and by turning every battle into a game of Chase the Chaos Gremlin. So let's start out with the golden rule. If you remember nothing else, remember this. Every goblin has an exit plan. If a goblin ends its turn in melee range, you're doing it wrong. Because they all have nimble escape, which means as a bonus action every round, they can either disengage or hide. And they should be using that every single time. So think, a goblin warrior pops out from behind a crumbling pillar, short bow in hand. Twang! Sneak attack to the wizard. Then poof, they're gone, back behind cover, down a tunnel, or into the dark. Now the fighter has to spend their turn chasing shadows. Meanwhile, 2 minions jump out from behind a barrel, scream, "Get 'em!" throw daggers, and immediately scatter. You're not fighting an army, you're fighting a guerrilla goblin war. And that's the key. These little guys aren't tanks. They're like mosquitoes. Annoying, fast, and hard to kill. And if you let them swarm, they'll bleed your party dry. So here's how you do it in combat. Your first step is going to be using the terrain. Goblins don't fight in open fields. They fight in labyrinths. Caves, sewers, forest trails, ruined temples, anything with corners, crawl spaces, ledges, and doors. You want verticality, cover, and tight spaces that they can disappear into. So make sure to design your battle map with some ledges where warriors can snipe from above. Make tunnels too small for medium creatures. Add crates, curtains, rubble, ropes, anything that gives them a place to pop in and out of. Goblins are at their most terrifying when they can vanish. The second most important thing is going to be layering your units. The minions are going to go in first. They're going to bait the party, draw attacks, and lure the big threats into bad positions. Warriors are then going to strike from the flanks or the high ground, hitting with advantage, and then ducking out of reach. The boss will be hiding in cover, yelling orders, redirecting attacks to his underlings, and generally being a little green menace. But behind all of that, you have the hexer. And the hexer doesn't fight. The hexer ruins the fight. They grease the floor, they blind the rogue, and they light up the ranger with fairy fire. And just when the barbarian thinks they've landed a hit, jinx, it misses. Too bad, try again. And lastly, but also extremely importantly, keep them moving. Goblins never stop moving. They don't hold ground. They hit, run, regroup, and strike again. So let them split up. Let them vanish. Let them yell at each other from behind walls like a bunch of cackling goblin walkie-talkies. And if the battle starts to turn against them, they're gonna run. That's not cowardice, that's survival. Goblins don't fight to the death. They fight to live, fight another day, and leave the party shouting, "Where the hell did they go?" And then they come back later with more traps, a stolen magic item, and possibly a trained weasel in a spiked helmet. Look, the point is goblins are built to frustrate, not dominate. They aren't there to win, they're there to make you lose on your own terms. That's brilliant, and that's terrifying, and that's exactly how you should be running them. Okay, now that you know how goblins move, fight, and think, let's talk about what they actually do. Because goblins aren't just stat blocks, they're their own form of storytellers and pranksters and plot gremlins. And with the right setup, they can deliver some of the most entertaining, frustrating, and truly legendary sessions your table's ever had. So let's go ahead and cook up some chaos. So for my first encounter idea for you, it's going to be a goblin siege. So think like a town's grain stores being under attack. Flaming arrows, ramshackle catapults, screaming goblins riding pigs. Yeah, you can do actual pigs here. But here's the twist. Goblins don't want the town. They don't really care about the people there. They just want the bell. The big shiny bell on the tower. One of them heard it speak, and now they've declared it's their sacred idol. So what's the party doing? Fighting off waves of minions and warriors trying to set fire to random buildings while the boss shouts, "Praise the Dingod!" and the hexer is casting grease under the guards trying to pull it out of the fire. Pure chaos. No real logic, just goblin goals that only they can understand. And for a second idea, think about a shrine that should not be. Deep in the woods, your players stumble upon a goblin camp surrounding a weird fey shrine. The goblins think it's cursed, or maybe holy, or maybe both. They've started worshipping it nonetheless, but they don't know what it does. The hexer's been using minor illusion to fake divine visions. The boss wears half a rusted breastplate and speaks in a fake booming voice. And the goblins now refer to him as His Loudness, Lord of the Leaf Throne. What starts as a potential combat could easily become a negotiation, or a prank war, or a total disaster if the players mess with the shrine and actually activate it. Stuff like this is the kind of goblin encounters that are just going to stick with your players. Not because of how strong the goblins are, but because of how weird and creative and unpredictable they can be. You want your players to walk away saying, "What the hell just happened?" and then talk about it for weeks. But now let's pump the brakes for a minute and talk about what can kill a goblin encounter. Because for every brilliant, chaotic, unforgettable goblin battle, I've seen a dozen that were just sad. They charged, they missed, they died, and nobody's gonna remember it. Why? Because the dungeon master played them like orcs. So let's make this very clear. Goblins are not orcs. They're not frontliners. They're not meat shields. They're not here to get in your face and go toe-to-toe with a raging barbarian. That's suicide, and the goblins know it. So here's mistake number one, is don't make them stand still. I know it's easier just to drop them on the map and roll attack rolls, but if your goblins are planting their feet and swinging, they've already lost. They need to be ducking behind cover, disengaging, firing from ledges, vanishing into crawl spaces every round, no exceptions. Number two is going to be forgetting nimble escape, and I can't stress this enough. This is the goblins' bread and butter. This is their entire survival strategy. Disengage, hide every single round. If the goblin ends its turn next to a paladin holding a glowing sword and doesn't even try to vanish, that goblin has failed its entire species. And number three, don't group them up. Goblins aren't a phalanx. They don't hold formation. They're not a Roman legion. They're a gang of ADHD gremlins with knives. So don't bunch them in a 20-foot fireball zone. Go ahead and scatter them. Use multiple angles and let them swarm like rats and flee like smoke. The bottom line is if you're playing goblins like orcs, you're wasting their potential. They're not brutes, they're chaos, they're mischief with hit points. And if you treat them like it, your players are going to remember them for a while. So let's go ahead and bring this all together. Goblins aren't weak, they're crafty. They're not cannon fodder, they're tacticians and trash armor. And they're not a throwaway encounter, they're a lesson in chaos. For your players, and for you as a dungeon master. They don't just show up to die. They show up to distract, to disrupt, to divide and conquer, while laughing the whole time. They're the masters of movement. They own the battlefield, not through brute strength, but through positioning, teamwork, and dirty tricks. You want to run goblins right? Here's the secret. Don't make them win. Make your players lose their minds trying to catch them. Let them chase echoes through tunnels. Let them walk into a trap disguised as a party. And let them defeat the goblin warlord, only to realize he wasn't even the leader. He was just the guy with the loudest hat. Goblins aren't about power, they're all about personality. And when you lean into that, when you embrace the chaos, that's when the magic happens. So the next time your players ask, "Wait, are these just goblins?" Smile. Lean forward and say, "Oh yeah, just goblins," and then ruin their night. I'm Monster Mechanics, and if you had fun with this one, if you learned something, if you laughed, or if you're already planning to add a flaming pig to your next session, hit that like button, and drop a comment and telling me your wildest goblin encounter, whether you ran or survived it. And make sure you subscribe, because we're just getting started here. Thanks for watching, and remember, goblins don't play fair, So why should you?